Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lora Rolling and this is part 4 of the cute penguin ornament tutorial. This is the cute penguin ornament that we are making. It is so cute. I love it so much. And today we're going to be making the unit called the eyes. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 3 yet, that's okay. You can do these out of order. I'll have those videos listed down below in the description. That way when you finish this one, you can go back and watch those. We just have a few materials to get ready, so let's get them listed and then we can get started. Let's go. So the beads that we're going to be using in today's video are all Miyuki Delicas. I have opaque light sapphire, white pearl AB, chalk white, and opaque black. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to call this blue, white, chalk white, and black. We'll also need some beading thread and a beading needle. I like to use the Eslon Fire thread in the color Crystal. This is 4-pound thread, but you could also use a 6-pound thread. And then I like to use a size 10 beading needle. If all you have is an 11 or a 12, that would work too. For implements, I like to use my long nose pliers to hold on to my thread at the end of the video. And then I cut my thread with scissors. And then today I'm going to show you how I use the fire method to end the tail. We just need to thread our needle with 3 feet of thread and then we can get started. So I've threaded my needle and now I'm ready to pick up my first 3 beads. Let's pick up 3 blue beads. Then I'm going to take these 3 beads and I'm going to pull them down to the bottom of the thread, leaving about a 6-inch tail. Now let's tie a square knot. Cross over on top and pull your tail through. And then cross over on top again and pull your tail through. So now you have 2 loops, looks like a little snowman, and I like to put my 2 fingers in the lower loop, the one that has the beads in it, while I tug on the tail and the long thread until that top loop turns into a knot. Now I'm going to get the tip of the tail super close to the flame, but I'm not going to touch it to the flame. And what that does is melts it into this teensy little knot. Now, keeping our 2 fingers in the loop, we're going to tug on the long thread and twist the loop until that little knot at the end of the tail touches the long thread. Now I'm going to take my thumbnail and pull it down to the beads, and the beads will turn into a little triangle, and that completes row number 1. Now let's tug the little knot over to one side so that it looks like the thread is coming out of one of the beads. Now let's pick up a white bead and a blue bead. When I say white, I mean the shiny white, not the chalk white. So we're coming out of this bead, it looks like. So let's sew through the bead that our thread isn't coming out of. And try to get those beads to sit right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 2 blue beads And we're coming out of this bead. Let's sew through the next bead. Once again, trying to get those new beads to sit right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 2 more blue beads and sew through the next bead. And this time we're going to sew through the bead right below it, the buddy bead. And when we sew through 2 beads, what we're doing is we're putting our thread in position to start the next row. So that completes row number 2, and now we're ready to start row number 3. So let's start row number 3 with 1 white and 1 blue. Remember, that's the shiny white. When I say white, I mean the shiny white. And sew through the next. And now let's pick up 1 blue bead. And we're coming out, our thread is coming out of this second bead right here. You'll notice the next bead is set downward. We're going to skip that down bead. We're going to sew through the one that's poking up. I'm going to refer to the poking up bead as the up bead. Now let's pick up 1 blue and 1 black and sew through the next bead. Always making sure that our beads are sitting right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 1 black. We're going to skip the down bead and sew through the up bead. Now let's pick up 1 black and 1 blue and sew through the next. And now we'll pick up 1 white. Skipping the down bead, we're going to sew through the up bead, and we're also going to sew through the bead below it. So when we sew through 2 beads, we're stepping up, right? Sewing through those last 2 beads means we've completed this row, and now we get to start row number 4. Let's start by picking up 2 blue beads and sew through the next. Then 1 blue and sew through the up. 1 white and sew through the up. 1 blue and 1 black and sew through the next. One black and sew through the up. One black and sew through the up. One black and 1 blue and sew through the next. One blue and sew through the up. And the last bead in this row is 1 white, and so we're going to sew through those last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 5. Let's start by picking up 2 blue beads then one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue and one black, one black, one black, one black, one black and one blue, one blue, one white, and one white. Sewing through the last two beads. And now we get to start row number 6. Let's start with 2 blue beads, one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue and one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black and one blue, one blue, one blue, one white, and one blue. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 7. Let's start with 2 blue beads, one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue and one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black and one blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, and 1 blue. Sewing through the last 2 beads, and now you'll see that we are at the top of our triangle, which means that this triangle is not going to get any taller, but it is going to get wider. So we're going to continue to sew on the sides and the bottom, but not on the top. So let's sew through the next bead without picking up any new beads. And that puts our thread in position to start row number 8. Let's start row number 8 with 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 white and 1 black, 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 1 black and 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue. Now we are back at the top of our triangle. So what we're going to do is just turn our triangle over and begin to sew down this side for row number 9. So let's start row number 9 with 1 blue bead, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 2 blue beads, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 2 blue beads, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 white, this is the shiny white, and 1 blue. Now you'll notice there's no up bead for us to sew this last bead onto in this row. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew down that top bead, and then we're going to get our bead to sit where it's supposed to. Now we're going to sew down the bead right below the one we're coming out of. And now we're going to change directions. We're going to sew up the bead right next to that one. And then we'll sew up that top bead. And now we can sew down the new bead that we just added. And that puts our thread in position to start adding our row 10 beads. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn our unit over, and now we can start row number 10 by adding 1 white bead. That's the shiny white. 1 white, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 2 blue beads, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 2 blue beads, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 white, 1 blue, and 1 blue. And now we're back at the top of our triangle. So let's turn our unit over, and now we can continue sewing down this side. Let's start row number 11 with 1 blue bead, one blue, 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 one blue and one white, one blue, one chalk white, one chalk white, one chalk white, one black, one chalk white, one chalk white, one chalk white, one blue, two blue beads, one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue, one blue, one white, and one blue. And once again, you'll notice that there's no up bead to sew through, so we're going to have to do the turnaround. So let's sew down the bead that's on the top, and then place our new bead where it's supposed to go. And now we will sew down that center bead on the second row. Then sew up the bead right next to it, changing direction. And then sew up the center bead on the top row and down the new bead that we just added. Now let's turn our unit over, and we are now ready to start row number 12. Let's start with one white bead, one white, one blue, one blue, one blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 2 blue beads, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 1 blue, 2 blue beads, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 white, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, and 1 blue. And that completes our 12 rows. I'm going to turn over the unit, and now we get to start adding our connecting beads. If this is the first triangle or unit that you've done with me, you'll see that I always add connecting beads to some of the sides, and then other sides don't get them depending on the unit. This particular unit is going to have connecting beads on this side and connecting beads on the bottom, but there's going to be no connecting beads on this side. So let's start by adding 1 blue bead, oops, then 1 white, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, and 1 blue. Now let's cap our corner with 1 white bead, and it turns it into a little point. And now we can start adding connecting beads on this side. So let's start with 1 blue bead, 1 blue, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 black, 1 chalk white, 1 blue, and 1 blue. Now let's add our cap bead on the corner. Let's add 1 white bead, and that will turn that corner into a point. And now I like to flip over my unit, and we're going to, without picking up any new beads, we're going to just sew through 6 beads, or 6 rows, 1 bead at a time. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now we're coming out of the top of this bead. Let's change directions by sewing down the bead right next to the one we're coming out of, and then sew up the bead right next to that one. And that little zigzag that we just did is making this last bead that we added a little more secure, so it's not going to get loose. Let's do that again. We'll sew up 2 rows, 1 bead at a time. 1 and 2. And now let's do another zigzag. We're coming out of the top of this bead. Let's sew down the bead right next to it, and up the bead right next to that one, and sew up 2 rows, 1 and 2. And now I feel very confident that this last bead that we added is not going to get loose or fall off or anything. So let's cut our thread. We'll hold on to our thread with our long nose pliers, and then we will get our scissors as close to the bead as we possibly can without cutting the bead, and then we're just going to cut off the thread. And that completes our unit. We only need 5 of these for the project, so go ahead and do this 4 more times, and I will see you in a sec. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here with me today and beading along with me. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you're notified when the next video comes out. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks for watching.